In the dead of night, a mysterious passenger and a journey lost between reality and illusion. When I stopped the car, everything seemed normal until the next moment, what I saw took my breath away. Had I picked up someone, or had I become the prey of something beyond understanding? It was late at night, around 1:45 a.m. I always preferred driving rideshare during the night shift because the city streets were quieter and there was less traffic, which made my job easier. That night, I decided to take one last ride before heading home. I accepted a booking through the app, and the pickup location was in a deserted part of town, a place where most buildings were abandoned and shops had long since closed. When I arrived, the street was eerily silent, with only the distant hum of the wind and an occasional flickering streetlight. I looked around, but I saw no one. I checked the passenger's name on the app and called the number provided, but there was no answer. After waiting for a few minutes, I was about to cancel the ride when suddenly, from the shadows, a tall, slender man emerged and walked toward my car. He was wearing a long coat and an old-fashioned hat, which cast a shadow over his face, obscuring his features. As he opened the door and sat inside, a sudden chill passed through the car, making the hair on the back of my neck stand up. "Take me to this address," he said in a low, firm voice, handing me a slip of paper with an address written on it. The destination was on the outskirts of the city, in a remote and abandoned area. I hesitated for a moment and asked, "Are you sure you want to go there?" "It's pretty far and there's not much around. Just drive," he replied sternly, leaving no room for argument. I started the car and pulled onto the road. Usually, I would try to make small talk with passengers to make the ride more comfortable, but this man's silence was unsettling. He simply stared out the window, lost in thought, or perhaps in something else entirely. A few miles into the journey, I glanced in the rearview mirror and noticed something strange. His eyes weren't focused outside. Instead, he was watching me. His gaze was intense, as if he was studying me, trying to read my thoughts. My hands tightened on the steering wheel, and an uneasy feeling settled in my chest. Then he spoke, his voice carrying an eerie calmness. "Have you ever picked up someone only to realize later that they weren't what they seemed?" His question sent a chill down my spine. I forced a chuckle and replied, "Sometimes I do get some odd passengers." He nodded slowly. "How do you know who is real and who isn't?" I swallowed hard. Something about his words felt off. "I guess I don't. My job is just to drive." "That's good," he murmured. "That's very good." For the next several miles, he didn't say another word. The tension in the car grew heavier. The deeper we drove into the outskirts, the fewer streetlights there were. Soon, we reached a long, desolate bridge. The only sound was the low hum of my engine and the rhythmic thudding of tires against the pavement. Suddenly, he spoke again. "Stop here." I frowned. "This isn't the destination." "I said stop," he ordered, his voice taking on an unsettling sharpness. Reluctantly, I pulled over to the side of the road. As I stopped the car, I noticed something strange. There were no other vehicles, no signs of life, and the air itself felt unnaturally still. The man reached into his pocket, and my heart began pounding. Was he about to pull out a weapon? My mind raced with possibilities. But instead, he took out a worn-out wallet and handed it to me. "Take this. Don't look back, just drive away." Sweat gathered on my palms as I hesitantly took the wallet. My instincts screamed at me to leave. The moment he stepped out of the car, I pressed my foot on the accelerator and sped away. My heart was racing and my breath was shallow. After a few miles, I pulled over under a streetlight and opened the wallet. Inside were a few old banknotes and a photograph. As I examined the picture, my blood ran cold. It was a photograph of the same man, standing next to someone. But the most terrifying thing was that the other person in the picture was me. My hands trembled as I turned the photo over. On the back, a date was written. It was today's date. A wave of panic surged through me. How was this possible? I had never met this man before. I quickly grabbed my phone to check the ride history, but to my shock, the trip was gone. It had completely vanished from the app. No record of the booking, no payment received. It was as if the ride had never happened. I was trying to process everything when I suddenly felt a presence. Slowly, I glanced up at the rearview mirror. My breath caught in my throat. He was sitting in the back seat again. But this time, his face was fully visible. His skin was pale, his eyes dark and hollow, and he had a twisted grin stretched across his face. A horrifying whisper filled the car. "You should have never stopped." Darkness swallowed my vision, and everything went black. When I came to, I found myself slumped over the steering wheel. I was parked in the middle of a deserted road, my car engine still running. Disoriented, I checked my surroundings. There was no sign of the man. My phone buzzed with a notification. It was a ride completion message, but the amount charged was zero. No record of payment, no details of the passenger. Shaking, I grabbed the wallet from the passenger seat, but when I opened it, it was empty. The photo was gone. I never drove the night shift again. To this day, I still wonder, if I hadn't stopped the car, would I still be here? Or would I have become just another passenger in someone else's story? I never believed in superstitions. I never paid attention to old wives' tales or urban legends. But after what happened that night, I don't sleep without a heavy dresser pushed against my bedroom door. This happened just a few months ago, and even now, I can't explain it. I've only told this story once before, to a friend who begged me to stop halfway through. He said it made him feel watched. I live alone in a small apartment on the edge of town. It's nothing fancy, but it's quiet, and I like it that way. At least, I did. It started with a sound, a soft, rhythmic scratching at my bedroom door, too light to be a knock, too deliberate to be the wind. I told myself it was nothing. I was wrong. I should have never looked. I've always been a rational person. I don't scare easily, and I certainly don't believe in ghost stories. But some things defy explanation. Things that linger in your mind long after they happen. Things that make you question your own reality. At the time, I was living alone in a small one-bedroom apartment on the third floor of an old building. It wasn't much, but it was home. The kind of place where you could hear the pipes groan late at night, where the wooden floors creaked under your feet even when you weren't moving. I had gotten used to the occasional weird noises. Old buildings have their quirks after all. But this was different. It had started with small things. A slight shift in the air when I was alone. The feeling of being watched when no one was there. Shadows moving just out of my line of sight. I told myself it was just my imagination. Lack of sleep, stress, nothing more. That night, I had been up late working on a freelance project. The glow of my laptop screen was the only light in the room. Outside, the city was silent, unnervingly still. Even the usual distant hum of traffic seemed to have faded. And then I heard it again. That soft, deliberate scratching at my bedroom door. Not the wind, not the building settling. Something, or someone, was on the other side. And this time, it was waiting for me to react. I froze. The sound was soft, almost hesitant. Scratch, 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 like someone gently dragging their fingernails across the wood. I held my breath, straining to listen. The apartment was silent except for the low hum of my laptop. Maybe I imagined it. Maybe it was just my tired mind playing tricks on me. And then it came again. Scratch, scratch. This time slower, more deliberate. A chill crept up my spine. I turned my head toward the door, my pulse suddenly loud in my ears. My bedroom door was closed, just as I had left it. No shadows underneath, no shifting movement, but something felt wrong. I sat there, unmoving. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, my screen casting an eerie blue glow across the room. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was my neighbor's cat. But I lived on the third floor. Maybe it was just the wood contracting from the temperature change. But then I noticed something. The air had changed. It felt thicker, as if the atmosphere itself had grown heavier. The faint hum of the city outside had vanished, replaced by an unnatural silence. No cars, no distant sirens, not even the occasional creak of the old pipes. I swallowed hard. I could feel it now, that unmistakable sensation of being watched. Then, just as I was about to get up, something happened that made my stomach drop. The doorknob twitched. Not a full turn, just a small, jerky movement, like someone testing it. I stared, my breath caught in my throat. The scratching stopped. And then, in the dead silence of my apartment, I heard it, a low, whispering voice from the other side of the door. "I know you're awake." I sat frozen, my heart pounding against my ribs. My mind raced through every possible explanation, but nothing made sense. That voice, low, rasping, almost playful, sent ice through my veins. "I know you're awake. I know." I forced myself to breathe, but even that felt too loud in the suffocating silence. I wanted to believe I had misheard. That exhaustion was warping my perception. But then, the doorknob moved again, a deliberate, steady turn. Click, click, click. The lock held. I wanted to say something, demand who was there, but my throat felt like it had closed up. Instead, I slowly reached for my phone, barely daring to move. I turned on the screen. 3 a.m. My fingers hovered over the emergency dial, but before I could press it, tap, tap, tap. Knuckles rapping gently against the wood. Then, the voice again, closer this time, pressed right against the door. "You ever pick up someone you shouldn't have?" A sickening dread settled in my stomach. The voice wasn't unfamiliar. It was his voice, the man from my car, the one I had dropped off weeks ago, the one who had whispered that I had gotten lucky. I gripped my phone tighter. My mind screamed at me to call for help, but I hesitated. How did he find me? Why was he here? Another whisper. "You put a lot of trust in a locked door." My breath hitched. A shadow moved beneath the door frame. Something thin slipped through the gap at the bottom, a folded piece of paper sliding toward me. I hesitated, then leaned forward just enough to see it. The handwriting was jagged, uneven, like it had been written with an unsteady hand. 3 words. "Check your closet." The air left my lungs. My stomach twisted painfully as a horrible realization dawned on me. The scratching, it hadn't come from the door. It had come from inside my room. A wave of nausea rolled over me as I stared at the note on the floor. "Check your closet." My body refused to move. My ears strained against the silence, listening, praying that I wouldn't hear anything. But then, a slow, deliberate breath. Not mine. It came from behind me, inside the room. Every hair on my body stood on end. My chest tightened. I didn't dare turn around. The walls of my apartment had always felt safe, solid. But now they felt thin, like paper, like something had been watching me through them all along. I gripped my phone, my fingers fumbling to dial 911 when, Kriak, the closet door shifted, just slightly, just enough. Number, no, 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 no. A pair of bare feet stepped out onto the floor, filthy, pale, wrong. I still couldn't move. My eyes locked onto those feet, my breath coming in short, panicked gasps. The person in my closet had been there the whole time, watching me, listening. A low chuckle slithered through the dark. You really should lock your windows. My stomach dropped. I had locked them, hadn't I? The room plunged into chaos. The closet door burst open. I scrambled backward, knocking over my lamp, sending shadows leaping across the walls. My vision blurred as I threw myself toward the door. But something cold wrapped around my ankle and pulled. I don't remember much after that. I must have kicked, scrambled, crawled my way to the hallway. My hands fumbled with the locks as something cold and clammy brushed against my back. The door flew open and I threw myself outside, slamming it shut behind me. Silence. I stood there, chest heaving, staring at my door, waiting for it to move. For something, someone, to step out. But nothing happened. When the cops arrived, they searched every inch of my apartment. Nothing. No footprints, no forced entry. My closet? Empty. It didn't make sense. Then one of the officers found something. Scratches inside my bedroom walls. Deep, jagged marks carved into the wood hidden behind my furniture, as if someone had been there for a long, long time. They asked me if I lived alone, if I had ever noticed anything strange before. I told them no. I was lying, because as they packed up and left, I couldn't shake the last thing I heard. That voice, that whisper. You really should lock your windows. And when I checked, my bedroom window was still locked from the inside.